So this is sort of a loose follow-up to a previous video I made on the Hulk. You don't need to watch it first, but if you want to, the video should be linked on screen now. One of the fun parts about the animated series Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes was the way it took a sort of greatest hits compilation of Avengers characters and threw them all together for 2 seasons in a generally retro feeling world. Like, this isn't an Iron Man who's got extremist tech, or an Iron Man who's actually a teenage version of Tony Stark from the past pulled through to the future because adult Tony turned evil. Yes, this actually happened once in the convoluted mess that is the mainline Marvel continuity. No, these characters feel like modernized Silver and Bronze Age comic book personalities, and the interesting part of that is how it allows Earth's Mightiest Heroes to play around with classic Marvel characters in ways that didn't really happen all that much, historically speaking. This is a long-winded way of introducing the idea that the Hulk wasn't ever really an Avenger past the first couple of issues until like 10 years ago. And one of the fun parts of this show is that it sort of shows us an alternate world where that wasn't the case. And instead, what we see is an old school Hulk building the sort of complex relationships with all the big Avengers characters in a way we haven't really seen before. So what I'm going to do in this video is cover in a few short segments the highlights of Hulk's dynamics with the rest of this show's cast, why they work and why they're interesting. First, let's talk Hawkeye, mainly because the Hawkeye Hulk dynamic was one of the most requested topics in the comments of that last video, and that makes sense. These two have a big old bromance. They join the team at the same time, well, Hulk's rejoining, I guess, and when the Avengers fall apart during the Secret Invasion, Hulk sticks his neck out for Clint. There's too many moments of this partnership to go through all of them, so I won't, but I will go into why I think this pairing works so well. It's not just because, as I noted in my recent Hawkeye video, that these two characters have very similar temperaments. It's because they're both villains. Or at least they were both often seen as such before they properly joined the team. Both Hulk and Hawkeye were hunted at various points by S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers. So they both know, perhaps better than any other character on the show, that sometimes the line between hero and villain isn't as clear as it seems. And they both know that if they were framed, if they were hunted down before, they know it could happen again. Hence why Hulk sticks his neck out for Hawkeye in Who Do You Trust? He knows that this could have been him. And I was going to say that his subsequent defense of Hawkeye just goes to show Hulk's character development since joining the Avengers, but then I realised it's sort of what he'd been doing the whole time, since his first appearance in the series. But that being said, I don't see him standing up for any of the other heroes in the same way. Oh, and side note, I think a great and, dare I say, underrated character beat is the way that Clint clicks so well with Hulk, but can't stand Banner.
Cap's right. You've got to stay here.
You're making it very difficult to not turn into the Hulk and tear you apart.
After Hawkeye, perhaps Hulk's closest relationship, at least by the end of the show, is with Captain America. And this, I think, is for 2 reasons. One unique to Earth's Mightiest Heroes and its story, and the other to the essential characteristics of these characters beyond this particular adaptation. In this show, a reason they bond is their shared pariah status. Everyone hates and fears Hulk, obviously, but the often revered Captain America faces a similar fate after the Skrull invasion. Suddenly, the media is out for his blood, but it's at this point that Cap dedicates himself to freeing the Hulk, who'd been falsely imprisoned during Secret Invasion. We don't see much of it on screen, and it takes a while, but we learn that Steve had gone so far as getting an official pardon from the President. There's some more hoopla in that episode before the Hulk is fully accepted by the Avengers due to Red Hulk and his shenanigans, but by the end we see Hulk and Cap affirming their friendship regardless of team membership. So that's what the show does to develop and cement the Hulk's bond with Steve. But this whole arc is, I think, built on some groundwork that it's very easy not to notice, and that's their very similar origins. Earth's Mightiest Heroes doesn't really give us an explicit origin story for most of its characters, but in most versions, both Hulk and Captain America have their origins with the military. Cap, obviously, volunteered for experimental serum to help defend the free world. And often Hulk is similarly created after exposure to military testing, albeit testing of a more explosive kind. The interesting thing here is that throughout their publication histories, both of these characters have repeatedly come to see the limitations and failures of the structures that birthed them. In what quickly became a metaphor for nuclear proliferation, the Hulk's destructive capabilities were soon deemed too great by the government, so a substantial portion of his life is spent on the run from the army. This, of course, we see carry over into Earth's Mightiest Heroes, and Captain America famously rejected the militarized nationalism which created him in the wake of the Watergate scandal, becoming a nomad, the hero without a country. Obviously, this is outside the world of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, but even within the show, the two characters frequently bump up against the authority figures of their world, like the US government, the Hulkbusters, and sometimes even S.H.I.E.L.D. Fundamentally, these characters were both people once upon a time before being transformed into weapons, partially at the behest of those in power. And I think we see the after effects of this ripple even into the depictions in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Another interesting dynamic in this show is the Hulk/Thor stuff. In this universe, in the Yostverse, these characters don't tend to get on much, and we see that quite a bit in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. In a relationship straight from the 60s, found in team-up stories and indeed the first few Avengers books, Thor can't stand the Hulk's disposition. He thinks he's a brutish and unchivalric ogre.
'Twould be wise to treat the lady with respect.
Which lady do you mean, Blondie?
The Hulk, in turn, sees Thor as a pretty boy, more concerned with his hair than with fighting. They're the original odd couple, but in Earth's Mightiest Heroes we see this dynamic develop. A grudging mutual respect is earned as the two fight together against such threats as the Masters of Evil and Kang. And when Thor is seemingly destroyed fighting Ultron, this is how Hulk reacts.
Gonna enjoy this, robot. This is for Thor!
So this is an intense bond, one which flickers easily between respect and anger, but it's a lot of fun to watch, and as I suggested in my introduction, it's one of the best examples of the way this show recreates a sort of parallel world to those old 60s comics, because this love-hate relationship between Earth's Mightiest Heroes' two heavy hitters is absolutely how I see classic Hulk and 60s Thor getting along, in a timeline where Hulk didn't just dip as soon as the Avengers formed, and those characters at that point stuck together. And speaking of 60s vibes, let's talk about the Wasp. I've spoken before about this character in Earth's Mightiest Heroes, how she preserves the sense of joy and wonder that superhero media ran on in the olden days, and how in this show she acts as the emotional core of the team. It's that latter point that I want to pick up on here, just briefly. Because yeah, Hulk's strongest relationships are probably with Hawkeye or eventually Captain America, but what about before that? What about the person that convinces Hulk to stick around in the first place? Well, I think that's Wasp, due to moments like this.
You're helping me.
Yeah, now hit him!
At this point, the world thinks Hulk is a villain. Most of the soon-to-be Avengers think this too, but Janet sees the best in people, so she's the first to actually help the Hulk when he's in a spot of bother, and it doesn't stop there. After this point, even when the Hulk is acting surly or is being controlled by figures such as the Enchantress or General Ross, she isn't afraid of him. She gives him the benefit of the doubt. See for yourself.
Things have changed.
I know many of these villains. The Wrecker and his crew are formidable. His weapon is of unearthly.
And in the latter case, when the Hulk is being manipulated by Ross, she risks her life along with Cap to try and help him.
Wasp.
Sorry I played stowaway, Cap, but I kept thinking about what you said. You're right, I should know better.
So while the other characters I've mentioned maybe get closer to Hulk, I think that when we consider the way this character works in this show, we need to remember Janet too, and her almost unwavering trust in a being for whom trust is a rare commodity. By focusing on these four characters, I don't mean to say that there's no interesting dynamics between the Hulk and the rest of the team, because there absolutely are. Here's one of my top Hulk-Iron Man interactions, for instance.
Sorry, I guess this is a bit over your head.
It's a form of cosmic radiation.
What?
And every now and then, the writers made sure to play T'Challa's stoic silence against Hulk, with humorous results.
You talk too much.
But here's the thing, I didn't even realise this until I started writing this section, but when the Avengers fragment during the secret invasion, the characters I've been talking about in this video are the ones who stay on the team with Hulk when all the others lose faith. Well, except for Thor, he's in space or whatever. And Cap is at this time a Skrull imposter, but from the perspective of Hulk, I think it says a lot that he trusts these three. Cap, Wasp, and Hawkeye, enough to put his faith in them during a time of universal suspicion and distrust. I'm not really sure if there's a larger point to be extracted from this survey of the Hulk's relationship with the Avengers, or these Avengers in particular, but maybe it's worth thinking about the overall trajectory of this character's story at this point. The things Earth's Mightiest Heroes has Hulk go through, and just as importantly, the things it doesn't have him go through. At the time this series was being made, there were plenty of stories and plenty of continuities where the Hulk just has enough and goes bananas, and it generally ends up pretty badly for most people involved. Think of the damage Ultimate Hulk does, or the whole Planet Hulk World War Hulk story, which even got its own animated film around this point. Earth's Mightiest Heroes, on the other hand, didn't do any of this. It's true that Hulk leaves the team and goes back on the run towards the end of Season 2, but he's made friends who he trusts, and who have proven to have his back when it counts. So maybe the show is suggesting that if these other Hulks had had similar connections, someone like Wasp to trust him, someone like Cap to empathize, and someone like Clint to get along with, maybe things would have gone better for them. Maybe 616 Hulk would have a lower body count if he'd stuck around back in 1964. And if this is the case, then perhaps the point of the Hulk in Earth's Mightiest Heroes is that no matter your strength, your rage, your capacity for great and terrible things, nobody's ever destined to be evil. No one's intrinsically, essentially a monster. It depends on what you do, and crucially, who you surround yourself with. And no matter what the world thinks of you, if you surround yourself with good people, who knows where your life will go. So I guess, yeah, maybe there is a greater point, but that's about it for the Hulk in Earth's Mightiest Heroes. That being said, I do have a pretty fun idea for another Hulk video, but it's not about this show specifically, or any particular depiction really, more about the general concept of the character. So if that sounds like something you'd be into, then let me know below. And it couldn't hurt to subscribe either. There should also be a link to this channel's Discord server in the description, so check that out if you're bored. But yeah, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.